And we're back here at the Shacknews Awards to hand out some more awards to maybe some older platforms, like the PlayStation 4. We're going to do the best PS4 game of 2021. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a first party title, it's just a game that shipped on PS4 in this year, 2021.
So
That
I
make sense, everybody?
approach so I approach this category as something that released on PS4, but but wasn't made for PS5. And there were actually two pretty big third-party games that came out for PS4, and both of them from Square Enix. And the first one is Near Replicant. And Near Replicant came out in April. This one released, I believe, on PS4 and Xbox One. And this was like a remake of like the old school Near from like 2009. I never played it, but what I did see of it when I reviewed it is a very, at least in terms of story, it's a very different kind of action RPG. And I really started to get into it, but I feel like Near Replicant is going to fit into a different category. So I don't want to necessarily nominate that. You had something to say?
Is this the version 1.22474487139?
Yeah, with all the numbers.
Why?
Why did they title it that? I don't know, because it's a very weird franchise. And I'm going to be honest, Replicant was my first exposure to this franchise. This series is weird.
Yes, it is.
It's so weird.
But like, that's one of the worst titles for a game I've ever seen.
Oh, it's an SEO nightmare. Don't get me wrong.
I reviewed Nier originally, like way back in the day. And it is an interesting game, but it's not a great game to begin with. So I'm curious, did
you play Replicant?
No,
because from what I could tell, Replicant improved the combat immensely. Like it is so much more accessible. It's so much easier to get into. It plays not quite like an action Final Fantasy. No, it just plays like a standard action RPG, like an anime fighter or something like that. But yeah, the combat isn't nearly as restrictive. It doesn't turn you off the way like the old one did, at least from what I can tell, because I didn't play the old one.
They're almost entirely different games. Some people might not know this, but Square Enix made basically an entirely separate version of Nier for the United States. And that's the one that you probably reviewed, Blake. Nier Replicant is the Japanese version of the game done for Western, redone entirely for Western audiences, and also with remastered graphics and like some new content.
I didn't play Automata, but from what I've heard, it plays closer to Automata.
It does.
Now, the other nomination that I am going to go with is this game released on PS4, Switch, and PC, and that's Neo, The World Ends With You. And this one fell under a lot of radars. I'm probably going to bring this up again later, but they improved the control scheme immensely. It plays a lot better on console than the original did, because the original was built on touch controls. And the music's great. The story is really wacky. Like the I don't want to say deck building because it's not a card game, but like it's you basically power up by pins, and the way you have to build your characters, it's really interesting, and I really like the RPG elements. The story went places. There was a lot of backtracking. I didn't like that part so much, but like if you liked that original game, like this is gonna scratch your itch. And the animation is beautiful, and I think for what it was, it's definitely the best thing I played on PS4 that I can get on PS5.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations?
I do.
I'm just curious, Nazi, what score did you give Neo? The World Ends With You?
I might have given it an 8 because I think it ran way too long. There's a whole thing where like a day will go completely upside down. So your main character just like decides, oh, I can go back in time, and then you have to do the whole thing over again. It's like, okay, that's great, but that takes like 2 to 3 hours, and I don't want to keep doing this. Like it feels bloated after a while, and that's my only issue with it.
Mm-hmm. TJ, you said you had a nomination.
I do. Persona 5 Strikers. That game was an absolute surprise. I thought that it was just going to be a Persona Musu game, just like a straight up Samurai Warriors game, but with Persona characters. No, it's more like a straight up sequel to Persona 5 in like every way, shape, and form. In that it continues the story, it's a good story, it utilizes the Persona elements well.
It's
And
kind of like Age of Calamity was for Breath of the Wild, right? Like I know it's more of a prequel thing,
yeah,
but it's similar where it's like it's not it's like a supplemental story to the IP that they're using.
yeah, and it's like it's telling of Omega Force, that like they've taken their style that they've been using for years in the Samurai and Dynasty Warriors games, and they're doing licenses now where they actually expand past that basic formula and utilize things from the licenses they're using well in the actual games. Persona 5 Strikers is a perfect example of that. You collect demons in that game, you build them into like your force that you use on a regular basis, and you level up your party members and get them new attacks as you go. It's a proper adaptation of Persona style into a Musu game.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're striking while the iron's hot with that IP because it's Persona's still ridiculously popular in America and in Japan specifically. Like it's huge over there. And this game came out also on Windows and Switch. But yeah, it was a PS4 game that came out this year, so it's eligible.
Mhm.
That's a good nomination. Does anyone else have a nomination for best PS4 game of 2021?
If I may, Asif,
Okay.
I would care to nominate Chivalry 2.
Okay.
It came out on the PS4,
Mhm.
and I mean, yeah, come on, it's fun. It's mindless, like fun. You run around lopping people's heads up, and then you can pick up their heads and throw them at other people to kill them, and just go around swinging a sword and being ridiculous. It's just, it's nothing groundbreaking as far as like anything's concerned, honestly. But it's a solid game. It's enjoyable.
Not
It came out.
groundbreaking as far as anything is concerned.
Yeah,
I
but
will
you know
say-
what? It's a fun game. It's
I will
it's
say
fun.
something to
Quote.
I will say
That's a
something
boss
to the
quote if I've
contrary
ever
of
heard
that.
one.
What?
I will say something to the contrary of that. It has maybe the best dismemberment system in any game I've ever seen. Like the way that you can chop limbs off and
Mhm.
knock and ragdoll bodies in that game
Yeah.
is beyond most games that I've seen.
But
I
that's
straight
what
up took a warhammer to a guy that was on his hands and knees, and I bopped his head into his butt like a croquet ball.
But having played this on both PC and PS5, that's a game I want to play on PC and PS5 before even touching it on PS4.
Yeah, but it came out on PS4.
That's
And
true.
Yeah.
and I mean, whether or not you would prefer to play it on on a newer console, of course you prefer to play anything on a newer
I mean, as
console.
long as we're scratching the
But
bottom
this
of
is
the
the
barrel.
PS4 award. It's bottom of the barrel. Whoa!
I mean,
say
but
bottom of the barrel.
if it's like, well, it came out on PS4, we can just throw some Far Cry's in there, some
I'm just-
NHLs.
I
Let's
just-
not.
no,
Let's
no,
try
no.
to
Exactly,
actually
that's my
move
point.
quickly through this.
No,
Anyone
but-
else have a nomination? Because come on, no
I
one's
actually
voting
do
for
have a
you.
nomination.
Yeah, Denny, what you got?
So I have a game that is only on PS4 that came out somewhat recently, and that is Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown. They had a
Totally forgot about that.
yeah, it's only on PS4. You can of course play it on PS5 as well, but the actual port is a PS4
Mhm.
option. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this game. Sega did an awesome job of bringing this back. Virtua Fighter 5 has been around the block a few times now, but was really satisfied with the gameplay and the net play as well. Holds up really well, really smooth. Lots of cool production stuff. They actually have all of the soundtrack stuff in there too from across the game. So yeah, that's my nomination.
That is a
Nice.
very good nomination. I
That is a good
didn't even
one.
remember that.
Thank you for reminding us that this came out on PS4 this year. it's hard to keep track of these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I was like, I wasn't sure where we were going with this. Are there any other nominations? No one wants to nominate RE8 for this. Okay, got it. It was a game that came out on PS4 this year. That's why I bring it up. Look, I wasn't scraping through the bottom of the barrel or anything, Bill, but I was just like, I don't know what came out on PS4 this year.
No,
PS4 is
I'm
sitting
not
over there
criticizing.
collecting dust.
It's more a comment about the state of like the fact that we're like, huh? It's not a criticism of people here. It's a criticism of the PS4 right now.
And no shade on the
Yeah.
PS4. It did a great job for many years. Like there was banger titles on that console, but its day is come and gone, and it's the era of the PS5 if you are somehow able to track one down.
Yeah, I mean, the PS5 has been out for a year now. If you can track one down, true. But yeah, that's just kind of what happens. You know, the new consoles come out, and the old consoles just go to Florida to retire.
No, but I think it's great that like developers and Sony are still supporting PS4 right now because they realize it's a huge addressable market there of people who already bought a console, already own it, and are willing to play your games. You know, like there's a lot of people are not upgrading to PS5, even if they could find one. It's still probably too expensive for them. So it's good that there are some games out there that were actually high quality that came out this year. So let's get to voting. I'm gonna start with you, Chris.
This is a tough one in that I didn't see much anything on the PS4 this year. Ugh.
Do you want to pass for now?
Do you want to pass?
Yeah, I think I'll pass for now.
Okay.
Come back to me.
You know what? I'm gonna stick with Shift 2.
Okay, Bill.
I'm gonna go with TJ. TJ nominated Persona, right?
Persona 5 Strikers. Ozzy, what you got?
I went into this expecting to vote for Neo: The World Ends With You just because of how much I enjoyed that. Denny came in out of nowhere with Virtua Fighter 5, and I'm like, that's a really good, and it's a PS4 exclusive, no less. But TJ talked me into Persona 5 Strikers because, like, those games were old hat for such a long time, and then they came around with Hyrule Warriors, and apparently they've kept it going with Strikers. So I'm gonna go with Persona 5 Strikers.
And then TJ, you're obviously voting for Persona 5 Strikers, right?
Yep.
Greg, what you got?
Do Persona 5 Strikers. A lot of people like that game, so yeah.
Yeah, it's highly rated, and yeah, those Musu games are fun. Donovan.
I'll vote for Virtua Fighter.
Virtua Fighter 5. Denny, you gonna stick with Virtua Fighter?
Yep, I'm gonna stick with it.
Cool. David.
Virtua Fighter.
Oh, okay. Hey, Chris, we're back to you.
Well, even though he switched his vote, I think that I'll go with Ozzy on Neo: The World Ends With You.
Okay. Now I could choose to cause a runoff election here, or I could just vote with my heart. I'm gonna vote with my heart. Persona 5 Strikers. That game's great. And I love that franchise.
So is that 4 for Virtua Fighter and 4 for...
No, it's 3 for Virtua Fighter 5, 1 for Chivalry 2, 1 for Neo, and 5 for Persona 5 Strikers. But actually, let's go to the ballot. We'll see what Sam... Did Sam have an opinion on this?
I can probably guess what Sam voted for.
He voted for Neo, the world end. Or no, sorry, that's no, he
That's
did
me.
not. He did not vote. So, in absence of Sam voting, I think he would have voted for
Shift 2, probably.
Nah, Neo. Anyway, it's still there. Sam's vote could not have changed the outcome here.
Sam, Halo's not on PS4.
I was like, he can't vote. Halo's not on this.
Wait,
Like,
didn't
yeah.
Disco Elysium come to PS4 this year? He probably would have voted for that.
That's true. Anyway, that's it. Persona 5 Strikers has won our award for best PS4 game of 2021.
We are the Phantom Thieves. Let's finish this for good! PlayStation